All right, here we go. Another amazing episode of Outside the Studio. I am so excited to introduce you all to Abbey McGrew. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Abbey McGrew, and then I will let her add to her own bio and her own origin story, because I love origin stories. But here's what I'm going to say. Intentionality, connection, empowerment. These three core values Abbey embodies and instills within herself and her company, Wayfarer, which, by the way, I love the name. So with these words being the cornerstones of the company's approach to design and client relationships, Abbey is committed to applying these values to every aspect of their work, from the initial design concepts to the final deliverables. And so I think this is the intentionality, the connection, the empowerment. I mean, like, as I look at your website, it's like heartfelt, designing heartfelt XYZ, whatever it is, right? So Abbey, I'd love it if you could, like I said, if you want to embellish on your bio, if you want to tell me anything about your origin story, because I love origin stories. And I do want to dive into, I think this is so important. This is so key as we think about that entrepreneurial life. If we have a product, whether it's a tangible product, right? Something that we can actually package and prepare and put on a shelf, or if that product is us, if you're like me as a coach, as a yoga teacher, as a meditation teacher, how do we think about really having that be a heartfelt offering? So that's the direction I want to go, but maybe we should back it up a little bit and let you talk.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me. And I guess my background origin story, I always knew that I wanted to be a designer, went to school for design, and then I started Wayfarer, my design business, back in 2016. And I love that you mentioned, the name, because I don't know, I'm pretty proud of the name. I think it can be so hard for people to choose a name in the beginning, and especially stick with the name then for now almost 7 years, that I still feel like it's true to me. The whole reason that I started the business was because right whenever I was about to graduate from college, I got married, and my husband got an offer to go play professional basketball overseas. And he just called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Australia right after graduation. You want to get married and come with me?" And I was just like, yeah, obviously. And so we planned our whole wedding in a month. We moved to Australia the day after my graduation, and it was just this huge whirlwind. Which was exciting, but it kind of ruined my career plans, because I'd always assumed I would go work in the corporate world or work in an agency or something like that. I knew I wanted to do design. I just had a very different image in my mind of what that career was going to look like. But then all of a sudden I was in a foreign country and I had no jobs lined up, and found it pretty difficult, honestly. I tried applying for jobs once I got to Australia, and it was just difficult trying to get a job on a visa. And when our life is pretty uncertain, we move to a new country pretty much every year. So that's the situation that I started the business in. So the name Wayfarer, it means a traveler. So I chose that name because at that point in my life, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to travel and have the freedom to, move around with my husband, see the world, but also still do the work that I really loved and went to school for. So it has that kind of meaning, but I feel like it also ties in really well to the clients that we work with. Starting a business, whether it's a product-based business or service-based or whatever, there's a lot of uncertainty whenever you're starting a business. You're kind of starting on this journey and you don't necessarily know where it's going to take you, or, what the end destination even is. And so I think as a designer, there's so much power in just helping our clients be able to visualize, this is who my business is. Like, this is what we represent. This is what we stand for. This is what we're growing towards. Whenever we can help them visualize that through a logo, through colors, through their packaging, through their website, it really makes a big difference. It feels like, I don't know, I just feel like a lot of people say, I know the business I want to build, but I can't see it. I can't see what I want it to look like, or I can't imagine, being at this certain level that I want to reach. And a lot of times design can be a powerful tool to help them finally be able to see, okay, this is real, and I'm capable of making this happen. And of course, there's so much else that goes into design, connecting with customers, building trust as a brand, all of that. But yeah, chose the name Wayfarer because I think it ties to my personal story, but it also kind of meets our clients where they're at as well, that we're kind of helping them go on this journey together.
Yeah, I love that. I want to pull on this, the intentionality behind choosing a name for a business a little bit longer, because I so identify with what you're saying. And also, as you were saying that, I started to think about, for some reason, my first tattoo popped into my head, which I got when I was 18, and it is on my low back. And I'm going to say that out loud right now. Is there forever. Although I'm sure, I could go through the painful process of having it removed. It feels to me a little bit like that, like choosing a name for a business that is representative of a product that is near and dear to your heart, whether, again, your product is something that's tangible you can hold in your hand, or your product is yourself. And as I was trying to create this podcast in particular outside the studio, and anything that I create, actually, like I have a book of poetry, it's called The Dark Moon. And anything that I create, that's typically where I start. I start with the title. Like that to me is really like where I always want to go before I even am able to kind of verbalize, what is this thing that I'm offering? Well, let's figure out the title first, and then I'll work my way backwards. I'm not sure why I do that, but it's something that I innately gravitate towards. And so for me, it feels a little bit like getting a tattoo, because it feels like, okay, as I start to, like with a book, for example, like you can't take that back, right? It's out there in the world, and you can't really change the title, and you can't like pull that back out of publication. I'm sure you could update it and like add a new edition and stuff. So my question around this is, if anyone is out there that like has started their brand, has started their business, and is like, for you still love your Wayfarer name, the title you gave yourself years later. What if we get to a point where we're like, God, I really wish I would have named my business something else? Is there ever a situation where you would recommend pivoting to a different name, or have you ever done that? Has anyone ever come to you and was like, I want to rebrand with a new name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We've had some people that we've worked with who have like changed up the name kind of in the middle, or have just recently decided to change their name because it just didn't feel aligned anymore. And I think that for certain types of businesses, it's easier than others. I think if you're especially if you're not having like physical products or something that everything is printed and manufactured with that name on it, that obviously complicates things quite a bit. But yeah, I think that a name change can be really refreshing, I think, for business owners sometimes, because especially, we find we don't do like naming services. We usually leave that to copywriters. But as far as, people who come to us who've been in business for like 3 to 5 years, and now they're like, okay, I need to rebrand everything. And maybe they are going to change their name along with it. But I feel like that tends to be a sweet spot when a lot of people just feel like there needs to be some big shift in their business. Because when you start, you might have an idea of like what you want the business to be, who your audience is going to be, what types of things you're going to offer. But then in that first year or so, a lot can happen. You might realize that something you were offering, you didn't actually enjoy it, or people just weren't liking it as much as you thought they would. And, you kind of have to shift gears. I don't know. That's generally what I find. And I think the rebrand or renaming process it's tough for sure. But yeah, I think for those people at that place, we always recommend just really getting super clear on what are the values behind what you do, the things that you really want to be known for, and also looking at, the problem that you are solving for a specific group of people, and not just thinking about, there's an obvious problem that every business solves or every product solves. What people expect, like when people are hiring us, they expect us to redesign their logo. That's the obvious thing. But what's the greater benefit or like the deeper emotional change that you are providing? That's what we really want to dive into. How is your service or your product going to not just solve the obvious problem, but what's the ripple effect of how it's going to impact their daily life? That's the stuff that we want to dive into that could potentially influence a name that feels more true to who you are or who you're trying to become. I feel like that was a long answer, but I hope I kind of
No, I love long answers. I love long and nuanced answers. So, because these things are just not black and white, and there's no like one right answer for all of us, right? Because we each have our own unique offering, and what resonates with us is important. So I love that you try to pull that out of, with each client, what is the value? Because it's going to be so different for each of us, right? And with that in mind, I watched the movie Air, which is about how Nike's relationship with Michael Jordan formed.
Yeah.
And I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so Nike's always had a big, huge presence in my life for different reasons. As a child, I'll just share it really quick. My parents wouldn't let me buy Nikes. And this was back in like the 80s and 90s when right then Nike was kind of embroiled in the scandal for being outed as one of the companies that was using these factories in foreign countries that didn't have the best standards for working and stuff, right? So I never really got to be like part of that whole Nike experience. For me, it felt like when I was a kid, it was this big, bad corporate company. So being able to watch the movie Air, and then I felt very inspired to read the book Shoe Dog, which is Phil Knight's biography about his whole reason for creating Nike, how that evolved, what it was before it was Nike, because it was a completely different name. I found that the reframing of that in my mind has been so helpful. It's also been so inspiring to watch, to be able to read somebody's biography who's gone through this whole kind of what you're describing, you go through with your clients, this whole like ideation phase of like having this thing that, and I do have a question here, I'll get to it.
It's fine.
Having this thing that comes from it, almost like, to me, have you read Shoe Dog?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well,
but I did see that movie.
It's so good, right? So
Yeah.
That's the thing. I was like, oh my God, I have to read the book. Because I just love Ben Affleck's character in that movie. It cracks me up. So Phil Knight seems like a person to me that has this innate drive and vision to create this thing that he allowed to evolve into what became Nike. And that very much has to do with our conversation around naming conventions. But I think my specific question is, do you think it is, you were talking about problem solving, right? Like, so there are some people who come up with an innovation, a design, a product to solve a specific problem, like a pain point in their life. And then there are other people, like Phil Knight's a good example, who created Nike because it was just like this drive that came from within him, that I don't know that he was trying to solve a specific problem, but it just felt like he was inspired to create shoes and he just wanted to sell these shoes. And it was just this thing that he didn't really have to work too hard to be inspired by, but he was innately inspired by. So I think the question is, in your experience and the people that you work with, what is it that people come to you with to create a brand in their value system? Is it like they're solving a problem, they're addressing a pain point in their lives? Or is it something that is innately inspired within? Maybe it's both, right? And is one more important than the other? Do we have to have that initial spark that lights us up to create this thing to be a successful brand in the end?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. So, a lot of our clients, a lot of them do have a pretty clear like problem solution idea. And maybe part of that is because we make it pretty clear that like we want to work with people who are looking to disrupt their industry. Like they've realized, oh, there's something missing in this industry, or, this product has been done the same way again and again and again. We need something different. I'm going to create something new. Those are definitely our people that we love to work with. So a lot of them do kind of already have that in mind. But I do think that, we'll have some clients that it does just kind of come from inspiration. And maybe it's not like a huge problem of like, there's no product that does this one thing and people need something that does this one thing. Maybe it's not quite that clear. But maybe they just had a personal experience. I feel like almost all of our clients, it comes from some personal experience where they were looking for something, whether it was, looking for clothes for their kids that were a minimal style and like premium quality and like from sustainable companies. Maybe they were looking for those clothes and just didn't seem like they really found enough options that they wanted. Or maybe it's just that I feel like I had another example in my mind and I literally just lost it.
Maybe it'll come back in a little bit.
Yeah. I hate when that happens.
I know.
Or yeah, maybe it's just, sorry, I'm trying to think of like the clients that we have right now, if any of them would be a good example. Or maybe it's just that, they love interior design and they've talked with lots of people and some people are like, yeah, I just wish that I had, an interior design resource somewhere that I can learn, that I can read, that's just like a really kind, like warm space. That's not solving this crazy problem, but it usually comes from some kind of personal experience, I think, of where they realized, oh, I wish there was this in the world, or more of this. And then they thought, I'm just going to create it myself. That tends to be the theme, I think, among a lot of our clients. But I do think that the passion or like the drive needed to really see things through. At least I feel that in my own business. Like if I did not absolutely love design, and really believe in like my ability to help people, I think it would be difficult for me to have worked so hard at it for so long, you know? Yeah, I don't know. Did that answer your question, or is there anything else I should touch on? Like, I want to make sure I'm answering it fully.
Yeah. No, I do think you answered my question, because I mean, I think that's a question that's supposed to make us think like, okay, what is my purpose for creating this thing? It's, you know, and there isn't any one answer I'm looking for. I do believe, like I said, like it's nuanced. It's not black and white. So it makes sense that you would have the experience of having clients lean towards like, okay, they're solving this issue. They're addressing this personal dilemma in their life or this personal desire in their life, and they're fulfilling that need. So it makes 1,000% sense to me. And so thank you for your expertise in that arena. And so what I wanted to ask you about now is more about, you know, you had this, like, you graduated from college, you were like, okay, I'm ready to go into the corporate design world and work in this. And then your soon to be husband whisked you off to this whirlwind adventure, which sounds amazing. And I'm so glad you said yes to, by the way, to like live in a different country, maybe it sounds like each year. And I totally get that it was hard at first. And so I want to unpack that a little bit. I want to talk about like what made you and how did you decide to create Wayfarer? I mean, it started from, I'm sure, an idea, and then maybe you built a team. And will you walk me through that process and what it was like for you a little bit?
Yeah. It's funny because whenever I talk about my, like, the moment that I decided to start the business and go for it, I cried like a lot, and I was not happy about it. They were like very sad tears because I just felt very unprepared, because it had all happened so fast. Like, I'd had a very different plan for my career, and all of a sudden I was having to, you know, take this totally different path, that I just didn't feel ready for. And I was kind of isolated. I was in a new country. I didn't know anyone there. I was very far away from like any community that I had. So yeah, it just all together, it felt like the worst time that I could start a business. But looking back, it was absolutely the best time. And I don't know, everything happened the way that it was supposed to, I think. But yeah, in those early days, I mean, even though I didn't feel ready to be an entrepreneur, and I didn't know, I just knew I had a really steep hill to climb, I think, because I didn't have like clients lined up. I didn't have a way to really network with people. I don't know. I didn't know anything about running a business. But I knew that I loved design so much. I literally would do it like day and night for fun. I mean, I knew that that's what I was meant to do. So I had to make it happen somehow. I just had to think, I don't know how I'm going to run this business and like learn all the things that I need to learn to be a successful entrepreneur, but I have to give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll try something else. But yeah, that was kind of my mindset in that moment. And the whole first year was just a lot of me absorbing any advice that I could get from other designers that I connected with online, mostly because I was in a foreign country and moving around, you know, often. So yeah, relying on building online relationships and learning from other people who were in the industry. And yeah, mainly just creating work also. Like, that was the big thing for me in that first year, to start finding what my style was going to be, because as a creative, developing your style is so important. So I did a lot of personal projects, and, taking on work to try and see, what types of clients did I like working with, what types of projects did I enjoy the most. Yeah, that whole first year, I think, was a lot of experimentation to figure out what kind of designer did I really want to be, and like what did I want to be known for within the industry. Yeah, that's kind of where I started. And it took me about 3 years before I finally expanded, kind of got in the groove of running the business on my own. But yeah, around year 3, that's whenever I finally realized, okay, this has grown too big and I can't do it all on my own anymore. And that's whenever I started hiring. So now we're a team of 3. Yeah.
Very cool. I love that. Was there something that, so many questions I have for you, but the one that's top of mind right now is, was there something that told you, how did you know it was time to take it to the next level in terms of hiring your first employee, or did you hire them all at once? Or was it like, okay, employee number 1, employee number 2, employee number 3?
Yeah, it was definitely like slow, because I was nervous about what that was going to look like. For a long time, I didn't think I would ever hire anyone, because as a creative, I think it can be easy for us to just like want total control of everything. Mixing creative styles can be difficult. So yeah, I was kind of hesitant at first to hire in general, but yeah, I started by just bringing on people like project by project. So doing contractor roles, that was a good, like, easy transition into just trying to figure out what's it even look like to bring someone else in to my process, and trying to kind of figure that out. So probably did that for like a year of having a contractor junior designer working under me. And then I brought in a contractor project manager, because at some point I realized that maybe it wasn't the design work that I really needed the most help with, because that's my favorite part of what I do. It was more the admin side, following up with clients, sending invoices, sending contracts, all of those things those are not creative tasks. So clearly those are not my most enjoyable things that I have to do. And so, yeah, bringing on a project manager ended up making a lot of sense for me to like pass on those things that I didn't feel I wasn't like holding on to so tightly as the owner. Yeah. But yeah, worked with the contractor roles for about a year or so, and then transitioned those to part-time employees as I figured out the workflow of having other people in the process, figured that out a little bit better, and also just needed people that were more consistent, I guess. And now that I didn't know if I was going to hire people at first, but after a while I was like, okay, this is working for me. I see the value of having other people involved. And then I knew that I didn't want people who were just going to like be here for a project and then leave. I wanted something that felt consistent, people that I knew were committed to like growing with me. That's when it made sense to move to employees.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, and this is kind of a related question I'm thinking about. So your business is online, right? And you were talking about building online relationships to grow a name for yourself and creating work around that in your more like, I guess what I would call an incubation phase. So I'm wondering if your employees are also, I'm thinking about this from the lens of like how our work landscape has changed so much since COVID. And now there's so many businesses that are still hybrid or have shifted completely online, or that are thinking about going back to brick and mortar. So, are you working 100% with your employees online? Do you ever see them in person? Is that important to you? Do you think that it's important for a business in general to have face-to-face contact?
Yeah, no, I have never met my employees in person. They've been with me for over a year and I've never met them in person. So yeah, I'm in Spain right now. Last year I was in Romania, so I was extra far away. We only spend like the summers in the US, but my employees in the US are in Pennsylvania and Texas. So they're also pretty spread out. So yeah, always done it remotely. And honestly, it's worked fine. Of course, there are challenges that come with it. But I feel like I have, as the boss, I've tried to, create moments where, the separation doesn't feel quite so big, and, having that consistent, at least FaceTime over Zoom. We have a meeting every single week where we see each other's faces. With me and my junior designer, we'll schedule like co-working sessions where we're, working over Zoom, but, trying to get that sense of working together, even though we are across the world from each other. Of course, I do kind of daydream about one day having, an in-person office, but right now we plan on traveling and living abroad for at least a few more years. So yeah, I just kind of have to make it work in this unique situation that I'm in. But yeah, I feel like the world now is so much more well equipped, I guess, with technology to be able to make a working situation like that doable. And I'm grateful for that, for sure.
Yeah, me too. Agreed. Cool. Well, so I want to get into a little bit more like specific questions as it pertains to your expertise. And so the first topic I want to touch on is building a brand. Well, building a brand around strategy versus like a trend. So, how do we know if our, I guess, brand or product or personal self, whatever it is that we're offering, is going to kind of stand the test of time versus be like cool for a moment and then sort of fizzle out?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard because now so much of our, I don't know, media in the world is so driven by trends, especially with social media, like trending audio. Like that's literally the social media that we consume is driven by trends and like encouraging us to follow trends. So it can be really hard to get out of that mindset, I think, right now, when it comes to building a brand. So one thing that I always recommend to people, because I feel like it's where a lot of people can kind of get stuck in this like trend black hole, I guess, is that whenever, especially if someone's DIYing their branding, the first thing that you might think to do is, I'm going to go on Pinterest and I'm just going to, search, yoga logo or something, and, just start pinning everything that speaks to you, which seems like it's a fine idea, right? But it can easily turn into just being influenced by what's trendy or, stuff that maybe you personally like, but is it really the best direction for your business? Because you're just going through and pinning anything that like sticks out to you. And then, you might revisit this Pinterest board that you've put together, and then things feel kind of all over the place or disconnected, or maybe, I don't know, you pinned a lot of things that you don't actually like that much. It was just kind of in the moment. So that's a first thing that I recommend to people to avoid doing, because there's no strategy behind that, right? It's in the moment, just like, this is what I like type of thing. What we do with our clients is, before we look at any kind of Pinterest boards gathering inspiration, we go through a list of very detailed questions talking about, what's the mission behind your business? What do you want to be known for? What are the values that you want people to associate with you? And like the personality of your business, are you standing for intentionality, sustainability, kindness, innovation, whatever. We usually try to find like 3 to 4 key values or like pillars of like, this is what we want to be known for in the world. And of course, also thinking about your audience, what are they looking for? What are the things that matter to them that also matter to you? Where do those things overlap? All of that stuff. And we're going to outline that very clearly. And then we go searching for inspiration so that we can filter out all the stuff that doesn't align with that. And that makes choosing a direction that's strategic, not just trendy or like preference driven. It makes it a lot easier to find the things that are strategically aligned with your actual goals. Another thing that I think is really helpful as far as noticing trends and trying to move away from them, we always have our clients list out a few of their main competitors. And I know some people don't like to pay attention to competitors because I think, there's no use in like paying attention to what they're doing. I just want to do my own thing and like stay in my own lane. But it is important to at least notice what competitors are doing, especially when it comes to like avoiding looking too similar to someone else, or just following like what everyone else is doing, right? So we always have them list out, 3 main competitors, and we'll just kind of observe what types of logos are other people using in your industry, what types of color palettes, what type of packaging, or even the tone of voice, like what are their taglines, what does their website look like. We'll just kind of observe and make note. Are there any common themes or trends that are popping up? Is everybody using the same shade of blue? And then we'll ask, okay, why is that? Is there a good reason that everybody is doing something in the same way? And if there isn't, then maybe that's a really good opportunity for you to go in a different direction. If everybody seems to be using blue in their color palettes, maybe you use an orange, and that's an instant way to potentially stand out. But you've got to make sure that it's aligned with your values and everything. If you're trying to like be known as like this really joyful, playful, warm brand, and you notice that like, oh, everybody's using like all these bright colors, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to go with like basic black and white. But like that doesn't really align with like joyful, playful, bright values. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Totally.
You don't want to just break away from trends only for the sake of breaking away from trends. You got to have both. It needs to break away from what everyone else is doing while also effectively communicating the message that you want to put out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I have a follow-up question as it relates to knowing your audience. If you're someone who is like, well, I don't really know who is out there listening, how do you ever work with clients that aren't really sure who their audience is or who they're trying to target yet?
Yeah. I do feel like it's absolutely something that we want our clients to kind of have an idea of like before they get to us, because we just want to make sure that we're not accidentally going to design something with the wrong person in mind, right? But yeah, I think that research, like doing user research, or like audience research, is the best thing that you can do to hopefully figure that out. If you're already in business and you've already had clients or customers, reach out to them and like send them a little survey to find out like, why did they choose you? What were they looking for that led them to you? What or maybe some other brands that they looked at. Those are things that are really helpful, I think, to do. And of course, if you haven't started yet and you don't have any people yet that you can ask to like get a more clear picture of who the audience is, I'm going to assume that you're probably your target audience. If you're starting the business, like you're starting it for you first, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I might ask yourself those questions. if you're a consumer, what would draw you to buy this service or purchase this product. But yeah, I think doing any kind of surveying of people that maybe you think would be interested in your product is going to be helpful, even if it's friends and family, but just kind of, if it seems like maybe they're the type of person that would buy whatever you're offering, ask them some questions about like, what are the motivators that they would maybe buy something or buy this thing. The more in their head you can get, the easier it's going to be for you to tailor your messaging, and also weave in some meaningful details in your brand and your website that are going to speak to that specific type of person.
So, okay, I wanted the other second follow-up question is about color, because I'm sure there's some psychology around color, and I've talked to a few different people on the podcast about color specifically. One of them is, if anyone out there is listening and hasn't had a chance to listen to Walla, WALAA, which is an interview I did, I think it was a few months ago. I can link it in the show notes. She's all about healing with color. So there's specific psychology behind each color and why you would choose it. And so, Abby, you started to talk about color in terms of like joy, lighthearted. And so it seems like it's a pretty important aspect to design. I was wondering if you could just expound upon that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Color it's such a great way to subconsciously communicate a message. And it oftentimes when you're in the store, brands all around you are using color in ways that you might not even like realize. You're just instantly going to make an assumption about a product or about a service based on the color that they are using. A good example is it's getting kind of hot here in Spain. And so we were at the store the other day buying a new like fan for inside our apartment. And there was one fan in this group, all of them were like white. The whole fan was just white. But there was one that the outside was white, but the actual blades on the inside of the fan were blue. And my husband, which I'm so proud as a designer, I was so proud of him for saying this. He said, they use that blue because it makes you think that it's going to be colder. And I was like, that's exactly right. And we did not buy that fan because it was way more expensive than the others. But that's exactly right. And I was so happy that he has learned something from me about that. But it does. It's like a subtle thing that you might not even think about, like, oh, why did they make that fan blue? But it is, you're going to notice that color and instantly feel like that's going to work differently than the others. Like there's something different about it. So yeah, it's something that we often have to like work through with our clients, trying to think of what's the emotion that we want people to get. And of course, depending on, the service or the product that you're offering, like for food products, color is so important for conveying flavors and, what the ingredients are. But with like service-based businesses or other types of businesses, color is usually about the feeling that you want people to know that they're going to have after working with you or after using your product. So yeah, those are things that we're thinking about. I don't know. I could talk about color for forever, but you can look up. I would encourage people to look up. If you just Google like color psychology, you'll find a list that kind of highlights all of these different emotions or themes that are related to different colors. Yeah. And it's going to be important. I think a lot of times people get caught up with choosing colors for their brand. They want to choose the colors that they personally like, or like colors that maybe, you painted your living room because it's your favorite color, and maybe it is a good choice for you to do that, especially if, I know you kind of touched on this earlier, there's sometimes the brand is you because people are working with you. And so if you want your personality to really be ingrained in the business and the brand, then maybe it is the right move to like use your favorite color as one of your main brand colors, right? But sometimes a different color is going to be more effective in communicating subconsciously how you want people to feel or what the assumptions that you want them to make about the brand. So that's just important to be mindful of, like, am I choosing this just because it's my favorite color, or am I choosing it because it's going to communicate what I want to say?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I think the last direction I want to go is around I feel like I always kind of dance around this personally in terms of, since in my case, I am the thing that I'm selling, right? My services are health coaching, teaching yoga and meditation. And so it's always a question for me about how, when we start to talk about getting into the mindset of the consumer or the client or whoever it is that I'm providing a service to, how do I do that in a heart-centered way? Which is one of the things that really drew me to speaking with you, because that's like front and center on your website is designing heart-centered logos or products or whatever it is. I want it to feel intentional. I want it to feel transformative. I want it to be life-changing and sustainable, because that's what these practices have given me in my life. And so whenever I start to think about not necessarily design so much, because I find design to be so creative and enlightening and just fun. But when I start to think about marketing, and we use the terms of like getting into the psychology of someone else's head to sell them a product, you know what I mean? I start to go, oh, am I supposed to be doing that? Like that feels a little bit, it makes me kind of stop and go, what am I doing here? And what is the purpose? So I wonder if you ever encounter that with your clients, and if there's a way that you kind of work with them around that mindset of feeling like, okay, now I have to sell myself. And that feels a little bit, the word I'm going to use is wrong, but that's not the word I'm looking for, because it's not wrong. Like, we're all here trying to feed ourselves. We're trying to offer something that is helpful and uplifting, right? Typically. And so, yeah, I just want to address that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really great quote, and I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly off the top of my head. But there's a good quote that we always share with our clients. It's from a book called Obsessed by Emily Hayward. And I highly recommend it to anybody. Our clients, we usually mention it because we'll quote it, and then our clients will end up buying it and reading it, and they always love it. It's a really great book that's all about building brands. And it's the head designer for an agency that worked with like Casper and Allbirds, and a lot of these like brands that really blew up over like the past decade or so. But they talk about how the best brands out there doesn't feel like they're selling you something. You're just connecting with them based on a shared set of values. And that's what we try to really focus on with our process, is just leading with that, the values that you're standing for as a brand. And if we can make those things come through with the branding, with the messaging, then it's not going to feel so salesy, because people aren't, like I said, people aren't going to feel like you're just selling them something. They're just going to recognize, oh, this person cares about the same things that I care about. And so, of course, I want to support them and work with them and buy from them. So yeah, that's what we try to focus on a lot. And I think how you get there, how you go from like, you know what your values are, but then how do I translate that to coming through with my branding, with my messaging, whatever. Of course, it's not, so simple. I guess there's a lot of things that need to be done kind of in the middle to get there. One thing that I think can be really helpful as far as like helping our clients get kind of in the minds of their audience, and then figuring out, okay, what things can we pull from that to reference in the design, is we always ask, kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier, we ask, what's the obvious problem that you solve, or the obvious reason that people come to you? And then we'll ask, okay, well, why is that important to them? And so they'll answer that. And then we'll say, okay, well, kind of asking, we just keep asking why. We kind of keep asking why to get deeper and deeper. A good example is one of our clients, they were opening a boutique store, and they're minimalists. They live very minimally, and they have a daughter. They've learned how to like kind of raise her also being a minimalist, and notice kind of the benefits of like not having a ton of toys and stuff for your kids. If you have less stuff, it's easier on everybody. So they wanted to have this shop with minimalist clothes and goods, all in, a beautiful style, for kids. And so we asked, okay, well, what's the obvious reason why people would walk into your store? And they said, well, it's going to like be very aesthetic. They're going to like the style of the clothes, and they're going to like that they're, come from good brands, like nothing that's like super cheap and everything's going to be ethical and all of that. Okay, that's the obvious reason people would come in. But what's like the deeper reason when they shop with you? What's the benefit going to be? Or like what's the benefit of having a more minimal wardrobe for your kid? And they said, well, you're spending less money on stuff. You're not taking up as much room in the closet. And then we kind of like kept asking, okay, well, why is that important? How is that helpful? What does that mean for their daily life? And we started to get to, well, you don't have as many options in the morning, so it's going to be easier for your kids to get dressed in the morning. And we were like, okay, well, why would that be important for them? And they're like, well, if they're not spending time, or if their kid can get dressed themselves, or if they're not spending as much time picking out clothes for their kids in the morning, that opens up room for eating breakfast around the table, or having some playtime before school. And they're like, okay, well, why is that important? And then we're like, well, everyone wants meaningful family time. And that's where we really get to like the essence of the brand. We're like, okay, that's what we want to communicate, because that's something that isn't going to feel like salesy, hey, buy our expensive, pretty clothes, but saying, we want you to have more time with your kids. And this is one avenue to get there. But this is what we really care about, is creating happy moments as a family. I hope that that's helpful. I feel like that was a good like way that we kind of kept asking why, and that helped us really narrow it down and feel like it was an authentic kind of message for us to grab onto.
Yeah, that's so helpful. I love it. And now I feel inspired to go clean out my closet. It makes me think of Steve Jobs, who I remember reading about or listening to somebody talk about how he'd wear the same outfit every day, right? Like the same black turtleneck and black jeans, because that decision fatigue, like the amalgamation of the amount of decisions we have to make in a day. And especially for somebody like Steve Jobs, we want our brain power to be able to focus on something else that is so much more important, so much more valuable, so much more intrinsic to who we are and what we're offering. And I love that as an example of just, I mean, I could so identify, and I think that's something I always aspire to as someone who loves to adorn myself in beautiful clothes, and often fall into the trap of like thinking I want more, but that doesn't fill the void of, truly making me feel contented with a beautiful closet, because then I can't find what I have and decision fatigue sets in. So I love that example. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the inspiration. I want to be mindful of your time. I just would like to know if there's any key takeaway that you would like listeners to take from this conversation, or if there's anything that you wanted to address that I didn't actually get to ask you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think key takeaway is I mean, I feel like I touched on it a couple times, but just be mindful of personal preferences. That's where people get the most caught up in like following trends versus making smarter decisions as far as their branding and design and everything goes. Just be mindful of personal preferences. Any time that you're choosing, a font or a color or a logo, always ask yourself, well, why am I choosing this one? And, is it just because you think it looks good? If it is, then maybe it's not the right choice. You want to make sure that there is some intention behind it that connects to the message that you want to convey. And yeah, I don't know, when you're DIYing your brand, keep it simple. You don't have to, teach yourself to use Photoshop or draw a really intricate like logo or illustration. I don't know. I think when it comes to DIYing, because a lot of people will ask me for advice on that, simple is better. I think those are my advice. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The best quick pieces of advice that I could share.
Yeah, those are great. I love it. Well, thank you, Abbey, for your time. I really appreciate it. And it's been such a pleasure to speak with you. And I guess this is the last logistical administrative question. Where can people go to find you and follow along with you?
Yeah. Mainly active on Instagram. So you can find me there. Our account is at Wayfarer Design Studio. And then, if you want to check out our website, we have a blog where we share lots of advice, branding, e-commerce, packaging, whatever, all the design advice on our blog. And we also have a page on our site with some free resources if you're looking for that, which apply to anybody, whether you're e-commerce or service-based or whatever. That's our website is wayfarerdesignstudio.com. And if you add /resources at the end, you'll be able to find all of those. We talked about color. We have a brand color palette quiz that you can take on there. That's pretty fun. So yeah.
Yay, I'm excited for that. Yeah. Thank you, Abbey. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Everyone, that concludes another amazing episode of Outside the Studio. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned something new, maybe remembered something old, maybe felt inspired to apply something to your life. You can hear my dog in the background. She's doing a little happy dance. So Daisy enjoyed it. Anyhow, I wanted to just pop in here to wrap us up to say a couple of things. Number one, I have such an amazing team that helps me put these podcasts together. Without them, I wouldn't, be able to bring these amazing conversations to you. So thank you to my producer, my director of creative services, my sound editor, my engineer, Consistency Media. Don't know what I would do without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. and the amazing creation and artistic musical genius, Drew Lovern. Thank you so much for putting together this music specifically for outside the studio. So unique to the show, only place you're ever going to hear it is right here. Thanks, you guys. You make my world go round. Stay well, everyone. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, share on the socials, especially if it's a show that you think, hey, this could help somebody else. That's what this is all about, right? We're sharing information so that we're better, so that we're inspired, so that we're lifting each other up, and we're learning how to be in this world, living on this planet to the best of our ability, sharing information and inspiring one another. And that's my hope. That's my hope for the show. Take care.